We bring before the sacred text a question concerning the life to come. We ask what biblical texts address whether personal history and memories are retained, transformed, or perfected through covenant faithfulness in resurrection. The lead verse drawn for this inquiry is Matthew chapter 15, verse 21, which records that Joshua left from there and departed to the coasts of Tyre and Sidon. This departure into the borders of the Gentiles frames a journey of the soul beyond the familiar borders of our present mortal experience, stepping into the wider reality of the covenant promises. The mathematical verdict of this guided draw is a resounding yes, with an affirmative polarity confirmed at a discovery level. The guided draw E-value confirms an anomaly, and the triple convergence standard is fully met, reaching at least 5 sigma above the baseline expectation. The texts do not speak of wiping away the self, but rather a refining, a transforming, and a perfecting of our personal history through the covenant. Consider the testimony of Enoch chapter 13, verse 6, where the prophet wrote out their petition and the prayer in regard to their spirits and their deeds individually. This confirms that individual deeds and the specific petitions of the Spirit are retained and brought before the throne. Our personal history is not erased in the resurrection. The specific requests and the individual spirits of the covenant faithful are preserved in their distinct identity. Furthermore, the transformation of our memories is spoken of in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 13, where the Lord declares that He will turn their mourning into joy, and will comfort them, and make them rejoice from their sorrow. The sorrow of our earthly history remains a part of our story, but is transformed into joy. The memory of mourning is perfected into a testimony of His comfort. We do not lose our past, we see it redeemed. This is echoed in the word of Isaiah chapter 39, verse 8, where he said further, "That is because there will be peace and truth in my days." The peace and truth of our days are woven into the eternal fabric of His kingdom. We see this covenant faithfulness echoed in 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 22, which tells us that the word of the Lord spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, and the Lord stirred up the mind of Cyrus. The mind, the memory, and the will are stirred to fulfill the covenant promises. The continuity of the mind is essential for the accomplishment of the word across generations. The patriarch Jacob also spoke to his sons at the end of his days, as recorded in Genesis chapter 49, verse 28, where all these are the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is what their father had spoken to them, and he blessed them, each according to the sacred blessing he had bestowed on them. The specific blessings and the personal history of each tribe were retained and carried forward into the inheritance. In Acts chapter 13, verse 33, the good news is declared that the promises appearing in history regarding the forefathers are fulfilled to us their children, in that He has resurrected Joshua. The history of the forefathers is not lost. It is fulfilled and realized in the resurrection. The covenant promises made to specific individuals in history are brought to fruition, demonstrating that personal history is retained. The Apostle Peter speaks to this perfection of our history in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 13, bidding us to rejoice inasmuch as we are partakers of the sufferings of the Messiah, that when His glory shall be revealed, we may be glad also with exceeding joy. Our personal history of suffering is retained and transformed into a capacity for exceeding joy when His glory is revealed. The memory of our trials becomes the instrument of our exceeding gladness. The psalmist in Psalms chapter 135, verse 13 declares, "Your name, O Lord, abides for the ages, and your memory, O Lord, throughout all generations." If His memory endures throughout all generations, how much more does He preserve the memories of His children? The enduring nature of His memory guarantees the preservation of our own. In Psalms chapter 42, verse 8, the psalmist testifies, "Still YHWH will command His goodness in the daytime, and in the night His song will be with me, and my prayer to the living Elohim." The song of the night and the prayer to the living God are retained as a perpetual testimony of His goodness. We are called to change our minds and be converted, as written in Acts chapter 3, verse 19, that our sins may be erased, so that the times of refreshing shall come from the presence of the Lord. The erasure of sin is not the erasure of our personal history, but the cleansing of it, allowing the times of refreshing to perfect our memories. The times of refreshing bring a healed mind, where the stains of transgression are washed away, but the lessons of faithfulness remain. Jesus himself said in John chapter 8, verse 36, "If the Son therefore will make you free, you will be freeborn indeed." This freedom in the resurrection includes the freedom of a perfected memory, unburdened by the guilt of sin, but enriched by the testimony of covenant faithfulness. We are made freeborn indeed, possessing a mind wholly aligned with the truth of our history in Him. He further declared in John chapter 8, verse 55, "But I know Him and guard His sayings." The keeping of His sayings is a function of a retained and perfected memory, guarding the word in the mind of the believer. The communion of the saints also testifies to the retention of personal history. In Philemon chapter 1, verse 18, the apostle writes, "If he has wronged you, or owes you something, put that on my account." This willingness to bear the debts of another demonstrates that our relationships are not dissolved in the resurrection, but are taken up into a greater communion. Furthermore, in John chapter 10, verse 15, the Messiah declares, "As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my sish for the sheep." The intimate knowledge between the Father and the Son is the pattern for His knowledge of His sheep. He knows His own individually, retaining the full history of their lives, even as He lays down His soul. This perfect knowledge ensures that no part of our covenant history is lost. The priesthood also plays a vital role in this transformation. In Numbers chapter 18, verse 23, we read that the Levites will service the priestly tabernacle at the appointed place, and they will bear their depravity. It will be a statute for the ages throughout your covenant generations. The bearing of depravity and the service at the appointed place ensure that the covenant generations are purified. When Moses and Aaron went into the priestly tabernacle at the appointed place, and came out, and blessed the people, as written in Leviticus chapter 9, verse 23, the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people, this glory filling the temple, as described in 1 Kings chapter 8, verses 10 and 11, where the cloud mass filled the temple of the Lord, so that the priests could not stand to minister, signifies the overwhelming presence that perfects our history and transforms our mortal minds into the image of His glory. The convergence of these texts provides a clear and affirmative answer to the inquiry. The biblical texts address this question by confirming that personal history and memories are indeed retained, transformed, and perfected through covenant faithfulness. The individual deeds are remembered. The mourning is turned to joy. The sufferings are transformed into exceeding joy, and the history of the forefathers is fulfilled in the resurrection. The mathematical anomaly and the triple convergence standard confirm what the text declares. The verdict is yes. The verses drawn in this Shield 17.11 session were Matthew chapter 15, verse 21, Isaiah chapter 39, verse 8, Proverbs chapter 26, verse 7, John chapter 4, verse 50, Mark chapter 3, verse 21, 1 Samuel chapter 31, verse 2. This concludes today's interpretation under the Shield Protocol.